We good? We good? All right, let me share this in the chat really quick. Let's get to that sleeper chat. All right, all right. Let's give it like 2 seconds. We are working against the clock here. I mean, I hope I can bang this out in 25 minutes. I think. I don't know how long these mocks usually go. I forget. But all right, folks. All right. As I start this sentence, we are now 37 minutes away from the start of the fifth annual Friends Who Gamble rookie draft. Of course, I've been hyping it up as the start of the era, the Friends Who Gamble 2.0. It's a new era. We've moved into the conferences. We're moving things around. We got new ownership coming in. It's new blood. I'm feeling really good about how things are going and how things are shaping up for this league. I do feel like we are close as we've been to 12 strong. So I'm pumped. I'm feeling good. This is my fifth mock. Realistically, this is like my 500th mock because I've been doing some in my spare time as well, just playing out different scenarios, seeing where I think teams should go, talking to different teams, trying to get an idea of where they might go, what directions they might take in certain spots. So that's what we're working with right now. But before we get into the mock, I do want to shout out our sponsors, as always, starting with Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's easy peasy moving and service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it, they will do it. Easy peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. All right, chat, let's fire it up with the devil faces. Let's fire it up right now. Let me pull up a blank mock draft sheet so I can get things off and going. Let's see. Okay. Looking good here. Let's share that screen. Let's go. Oh, I already have them pulled up. Hold on. All right. All right. Here we go. All right. I put a lot of thought into this. And I'm going to try my best to stick with my instincts and kind of, ear to the ground. What have I been hearing? But at the same time, I think I need to also speak up and voice my mind. I don't want to just be a sheep. I don't want to try and, play into people's hands because I'm not quite sure. Maybe people are feeding me disinformation. So if I feel like I'm getting good info and I want to roll with that, I'm going to roll with that. But at the same time, if I feel like I see something that I think a team really should be doing, then maybe I'm going to speak up on that and kind of voice my opinion. So starting at the top, I think this is a no-brainer. I've made my jokes, wait until 3, do this and that, whatever. Ash and Ginty. I mean, I'm not going to get too caught up, especially in this first round. I'm not going to get too caught up in the accuracy of McMorrow's pick specifically. If he wants to pick Ginty third, he can pick third. I'm more focused on the actual tranches of picks and in who I think he's going to select in those trios as he rips them off. But Ginty is easily locked into being in this top 3. So if he wants to joke around and make him third overall, have at it. I will not take that as a knock on my accuracy in this draft, but if others want to, that's their prerogative. Ginty locked in 1-1. Now, this is where I want to speak up. Because I will just say, I've always been mocking Hampton. I've really felt like Hampton is a lock for this top 3. And I still think that he might be, but I need to voice my opinion here. At 2, I have... Should I say it? At 2, I think McMorrow's got to consider... I don't want to say it. At 2, I think McMorrow's got to consider Travis Hunter. To walk away from this draft with Ashton Ginty and Travis Hunter, I think it's a smart thing that needs to be done. I think that passing up on that is, in a sense, fantasy malpractice. I mean, you have a guy that just went second overall. I understand it, right? Okay, is he going to be playing D back? Is he going to be playing wide receiver? I don't know. I mean, based on what I've been seeing in these press conferences, Liam Cohen is only talking about how he fits into that wide receiver room. I would not be scared away from Brian Thomas Jr. being in that, breaking out the way that he did. I think on my last mock draft, I brought up Brian Thomas Jr.'s stats and how it was heavily inflated by the insane amount of targets he was getting from Mac Jones in those final 4 or 5 weeks. Either way, Travis Hunter, that's way more draft capital that they invested in him. They made an insane trade to move up that could be absolutely crippling to the Jaguars franchise if this does not pan out. I just feel like walking away with 2 superstars, 2 generational players. That's what I see in the chat right here. Walking away from this draft with these 2 guys, I just feel like has to be a must. I feel like it's something that you absolutely have to do. If you disagree, you disagree. Hey, it's not my team, but if I was in this spot, that's what I would be doing myself. So I just have to voice that opinion. Now, we move on to the 3rd pick because, like I said, I've always had Hampton be mocked into this top 3. I felt like he was as much of a lock as Ginty was, essentially, just because McMorrow seems so locked into those guys. This changes things, right? Because I've been really talking about, does Cam Ward, should he play the game and, take a gamble and try and get him in this next set of picks, or maybe even get him in this 3rd set of picks. I do think it's something worth considering. I think it's a gamble that's worth taking. And I think that's kind of what he should do. I think that he should still take Hampton. I mean, this is a 1st-round running back going into a Harbaugh and Greg Roman system. And I think that it's a smart play. I think that getting 2 running backs like this, and I voiced my concerns about Bucky Irving and what he can be and, how things typically play out with guys with that draft capital. I don't think you should play with your food too much with the running backs. Get 2 guys like this. You get 2 running backs with 1st-round draft capital here, and you can walk away with that. And I do not think that you're going to regret that, okay? Because I do not think that the Zits are looking for Ward at 4. I've talked about this with McMorrow. I've talked about this with some other teams. If the Zits want to kind of troll McMorrow and take Cam Ward, they can go ahead. I mean, does Cam Ward become a starter for the Zits over Bryce Young? Probably. But he's got Lamar Jackson. He's got Bryce Young. He's got Geno Smith, who appears to be locked in for the next 2-3 years. I would not be too concerned about Geno's age. I have not seen any reason to be concerned about that right now. I just think that quarterback is the least of Bowen's worries right now. So I would take the gamble. I mean, I get it. Okay, 1st overall pick. He got Warren Moon's number. I think there's a chance that the Titans are just dummies. I mean, they let Vrabel go. They were, hired bad GM after bad GM. Brian Callahan, I mean, I didn't see anything last year that made me think, yeah, you know what? The team sucked and they got the 1st overall pick, but they hired the right guy. I'm not totally sold on the Titans as a franchise. I like Cam Ward. He seems like a good kid. He seems like a hard worker, but I'm not totally sold on him being this generational talent. I mean, I don't think he's a generational prospect. I mean, he could develop into something, right? I mean, like Pat Mahomes wasn't a generational prospect, but look at what he is now. So there's always that upside play with these quarterbacks, but I just think it's the least of Bowen's concerns right now. I don't see any reason why he should be going here when he could take one of these running backs off the board if he wants to. So I just think that right here, the Zits, I agree, chat. I mean, I think if I'm ranking Cam Ward amongst last year's quarterback class, I think that's something I would deeply consider is where does he rank there? I mean, is he the 5th or 6th guy off the board? What was it, chat? Was it 6 quarterbacks that went in that first 12 or whatever picks? I don't know. I mean, I think that he goes after all of those guys. I mean, maybe he has a case against J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, but I think that's right where he is. Or, yeah, Bo Nix, I think he went last. I think that's right where he is, and you can kind of sort it out from there. But, I mean, he's not running up the ranks in that draft class, so I think that's something to consider. Now we move on to the Zits at 4. The Zits, they traded Saquon Barkley to get this pick. Yes, they do have a 12th pick here. I think it gets a little risky when you're talking about the running backs are going to be available here. I have a feeling that one of Caleb Johnson or a late riser and RJ Harvey is going to be available at 12, but it's also not something I'd necessarily bank on. And I think that when you're trading Saquon Barkley, and now he's got Josh Jacobs, who I think is fantastic. He's got David Montgomery, who is great even as a 1B in that backfield. And I think it's closer than a typical 1A, 1B is, anyways. Um, but he is the thumper in that backfield. He did suffer pretty brutal injury last year that missed, a decent amount of time. And then he's got Trey Benson. I don't think that Bowen should play around too much and just grab a running back here. I think either of the Ohio State guys, you cannot go wrong. But because we're a New England-based league, because we're Pats fans, I'm going to take Bowen going with Travion Henderson at this fourth spot. Now, a preview of coming up, right? I talked about Cam Ward, and in other mocks I've had him falling as far as here. I do think there's some uncertainty with Wallace at this 8th pick. We were talking about Bowen and how Cam Ward could be a starter for him. If Bowen were to look to troll, I do think that trading up from 12 to 8 could be a spot where he could do that. That's where I think McMorrow should try and play it safe. Okay, so one, I'm just going to check off Ted McMillan. I know he's been a McMillan guy. Now you got 2 running backs. You got 2 wide receivers. Then you can take Cam Ward. Now you got your quarterback. And then after that, I think it's a no-brainer. You're going to take Quinshon Judkins. I understand that the Browns aren't the most exciting landing spot for any player of any position. I totally get that. But as I said on last night's show, our post-draft rankings, I just feel like Judkins is kind of a no-brainer. It feels like Stefanski wants to get back to that run-heavy attack that they found success with. And, let's face it, the Browns are never going to be Super Bowl contenders, but they can be wild card guys. They can compete for the division in that NFC or AFC North for sure. But they've found the most success when they were running the ball and they had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And they moved away from that because they invested so much into Deshaun Watson, and they had to try and tailor the offense to fit more of what he brings to the table in terms of play style. But I think that Judkins is going to come back and he's going to be that workhorse for them. I think that Sampson can be really good for them. But Judkins, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run the ball. He can work with a heavy workload. We saw him do it at Ole Miss. We saw him find a lot of success in a 2-headed attack at Ohio State. So I'm not worried about that stuff at all. I love him in Cleveland, even though they don't have the running back figured out or the quarterback figured out. They probably need to get another receiver. They have a lot of things they need to figure out, but I think they want to run the ball. I think they're committed to that. I think that these 3 are a no-brainer in this spot. Now we get to Wallace at 8. The vibe that I get is that Wallace is holding out hope for a Henderson or a Judkins to maybe fall to him at 8. I just think that's unlikely. I think that this top 7 is pretty locked in. It can go in any order. It doesn't really matter. But I think the actual players coming off the board are locked in. So I think Wallace is on the outside looking in. If he wants to get one of these guys, he's going to have to make a move to trade up. I do think this is a probably the most likely trade back spot in the first round. Or at least it's likely to be the first trade back spot. I think that McMorrow is going to stick and pick here. And then, of course, I think Bowen really likes his options here at 4 as well. So I'm not in the business of trying to predict these trades. I don't know what's going to go on there. So I just have to operate as if Wallace is going to make that pick. I don't see Wallace as a guy that is going to pass up on first-round draft capital receivers in Ibuka or Matthew Golden for a late-rising running back that's 24 in R.J. Harvey. I think it's an easy pick to make there at 8 with R.J. Harvey because he has Bo Nix and chasing after the stack. I don't think Wallace cares too much about chasing the stacks like that. But Harvey, he was a late riser. He was a second-round running back. He's 24. I don't know if that's the pick that he's going to make, or Caleb Johnson, who was a third-round running back who, he still went day 2, but he did fall a bit further than I think everyone expected. But I do think that Pittsburgh is a really good landing spot for him. But I just don't know if Wallace is in the business of taking one of those guys over a guy like Ibuka or Matthew Golden, who went, in the top 25 of the first round. So for that reason, I think that if Wallace does stick and pick here, I think he just goes best player available. And I think in that case, I think there's an argument for one of the tight ends, but I don't think that he's going to be using the 8th pick there. So I think, and like I said, I think the first round is I think the rookie draft is all about best player available, with positional need kind of being the tiebreaker when you're really, really, really tied up. So for that reason, I think he's going to go with Ibuka here, assuming that he's making the pick at 8. The reason I say that is for all the things I already listed, but also I just think Ibuka, I understand it's a crowded room right now. We saw how quickly that cleared up for JSN, right? It looks like the Bears could be cleaning house a bit, and Keenan Allen's gone. I have a feeling that if it's not this year, maybe it's after the season. But I think DJ Moore is going to be gone sooner rather than later. Rome Odunze all of a sudden can really be that downfield threat. And it sounds kind of derogatory to say him in the Josh Reynolds role. For the Bears and Ben Johnson, but getting Josh Reynolds was. Am I thinking of the right guy? Josh Reynolds. There was another guy too. I mean, Khalif Raymond, I guess, as well. But a guy with Rome Odunze's skill set in that downfield role, I think could be really effective in Ben Johnson's offense. So, it might sound derogatory to stick him in a role like that, but I think that things are going to open up for Rome Odunze real soon. And I think that he can really start to take off. But we'll see. So, I just think, I get that, Mike Evans is still there. Chris Godwin is still there. Evans, he's 31, 32, and he's been unbelievable, and it seems like he doesn't age. But, at some point, it's going to happen. Chris Godwin, I feel like, maybe they're not concerned about how he's rehabbing from the ankle injury, but I do think there has to be concern for a guy that dislocated his ankle. He's got a torn ACL on the record. And then, Jalen McMillan was like a third-round pick. So, I'm not going to be like, oh, they used the 19th pick or whatever on Emeka Ibuka, but I'm really worried about the third rounder that they had last year. I understand that he broke out. I think that they're looking for the future. And Wallace is in a spot where he doesn't need the guy that he takes here to contribute right away. So I think it's better to just take the best player available, rely on, his talent in what should be a good situation when the opportunity arises, and you should just take him right there. Now I move on to McMorrow with a 9, 10, and the 11. I think one thing that has to come off the board here, I'm going to go Colston Loveland. How can you not love him in that Bears spot, right? I mean, I do think there's some concern that he might not be totally ready for week 1, but I mean, with the spot McMorrow's in, who gives a shit about that? After that, I mean, okay, we're looking at 3 receivers, 3 running backs. That's where it's tough. I mean, are we looking running back here? Are we talking running back? I mean, does he go for another quarterback here? I don't know. I mean, to me, I think McMorrow needs to seriously consider just going what I think is best player available and taking Tyler Warren and going double tight end. I mean, we don't know how these guys are going to pan out. Some guys take 2-3 years. We've seen tight ends start to break out a little bit quicker than they used to maybe 10 years ago. But I think double tight end is something that should be really put into consideration here. I mean, just make sure that you can kind of lock down that position. If both of these guys break out, then that's great for you because you can either have insane depth for the next decade, or you can try and trade one of these away for, whatever you need to fill in the holes for the rest of your team if you want to. I think that we could be looking at trade back spots here, or maybe using these picks to trade for veteran players. But I think that it's something, especially assuming the board falls this way, I think it's something that should seriously be considered. I don't think it's something that he has to do, but he's got his quarterback. He's got 3 running backs. He's got 3 wide receivers. I just think it's something worth considering. Then we get to the 111. This is where I think it's tough. I mean, does he take one of these running backs? Does he take one of the wide receivers? I think he can go either way. I think it really should just come down to who is his favorite player on the board right now and who does he trust the most, because ideally, whoever this is going to be, his bench option, and you still want that to be good. But I mean, take the guy that you like. I think McMorrow has been really into Matthew Golden. I haven't gotten his reaction after the draft, going to Green Bay, all that. I know Amaral wasn't crazy about the Green Bay landing spot. I don't totally agree. I mean, I personally like seeing Golden go somewhere where he could be like a 1B type of option. But I also think that going into Green Bay with LaFleur, who I think is a really good coach, Christian Watson, who knows how much he's going to be playing, in the future. Romeo Dobbs, he's a free agent after this year. Just like I was saying with Tampa Bay, back in the Green Bay, that could be a wide receiver room that could really clear up before you can even blink. So I think the running backs are interesting here. If he really likes one of these guys, I think this is probably the most indecisive I am in this mock draft right now. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden, though. I think you should just, load up at some wide receiver, take one of those guys. You do have Bucky Irving at home already. So, if you want to factor it in that way, you already have your 4 running backs. Now you got your 4 wide receivers. I think you're building out a pretty solid roster here. Let's just take a look at McMorrow's roster at the end of the first round right now. I mean, to me, that looks unbelievable. And I know, can you really bank on these guys all hitting? No. You know, going into last year, you're right, chat. You're right. It's only 3 receivers for McMorrow right now. To me, that actually makes it more of a reason they should be looking wide receiver. Yeah, you know what? I think I was looking at Abuka in that 8 spot, and I think I mistook him for being a McMorrow draft pick. But yeah, I think that's even more of a reason to go Golden there. He does have downs. Uh, Josh Downs. He does not have Down syndrome. He has Josh Downs waiting for him on his team already. I mean, you know, I think that he can do a little bit better than that. Bumping Josh Downs to the bench, I think, is a solid move. I mean, that is a great depth piece right there because I think there's an argument for Josh Downs to be. I can't believe I said that. I think there's an argument for Josh Downs to be the wide receiver one in Indy right now, anyway. So, I mean, you know, I like this play. I like how we're building this out. I think we're putting together a pretty good roster here. Now we get to Bowen at 12. I think here, if it's Bowen, I think it's a no-brainer. Caleb Johnson in this situation. Uh, what more do I need to say? Now he's got the 2 running backs. Running back seems to kind of be totally figured out for him now. He's got Jacobs. He's got Montgomery. Now he's got Henderson and he's got Johnson to take him into the future. And that's 2 starters and that's 2 flex right there. And then he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants with his wide receivers and figure tight end out later. I think tight end's one of those positions you shouldn't force it at tight end. If you can have guys fall into your lap, if you can get them a good value, then of course you should go after those guys. But you know, if you feel like you're really going to pay up or you're going to reach to get somebody, I don't think it's worth it at tight end. And you know, right now I don't think that there's any tight end that's on the board that should even be, you know, mentioned in the same breath as a top 18 pick. So yeah, I think right there, that's a, you know, run to the podium and submit a pick for Caleb Johnson there. Now we get to Slippery Pete, who just traded for that 2-1. I mean, I feel like Pete, you know, he did trade Laporta to get this pick. He got Kelsey in return. If I'm him, I'm not feeling totally comfortable about Kelsey. You know, maybe he can be good enough for this year. Or I shouldn't say maybe. He should be more than enough for this year. But it sounds like he's on his retirement tour. I feel like Pete would maybe be hoping that a Loveland or a Warren could fall to him at 2-1. I know that he was saying that he's looking to maybe trade that for something. I don't know. Chad, can you help me out? Are there any like top 3 fantasy tight ends that are on the trade block right now that he could maybe trade for using that pick? I'm not sure. I don't know who's on the trade block. I don't know if there's been any teams that have been putting a top end tight end like that on the block. But, you know, I'm sure that if there was, any of those teams could be interested in a potential swap like that. But I think, you know, like I said, I can't be predicting trades here. Maybe if they had like a better interface and I could do trades on this mock board, maybe I could start doing that. I think that would be pretty sweet. Kind of like what PFF does. But alas, I cannot. So I have to assume that Pete is making the pick here. I feel like for him, it's going to be RJ Harvey in the spot, right? I mean, he's got his wide receivers. I don't totally love the wide receivers on the board here. You know, he's got his quarterbacks. He has Bijan. He's got Taylor. Taylor's got some injury concerns, right? He's also going to be a free agent after this year. That can always get messy with running backs, right? Is he going to be a free agent after this year? I could be wrong on that. I feel like that's what we were talking about last night. But then he's got Kyron Williams, who I think that he's still going to be great this year, but I think there needs to be a contingency plan for when he inevitably kind of hits that McVay cliff that we saw, you know, Todd Gurley hit. You know, we've seen other guys. You know, Darrell Henderson was a great fantasy option at cost until he wasn't. You know, we see McVay like to run guys into the ground. I talked about it last night. Kyron Williams is not an explosive guy. He's effective with his touches, especially near the end zone. But I think that there should be some real concern, maybe not for 2025, but for 2026 and beyond. So in this spot, I feel like it's worth Pete maybe trying to plan ahead for when he might need a third running back to step up. Plus, that would give him a 4th running back. Chat, is there anybody else on his roster that besides like Algier that he can start at running back? I'm not totally sure. I'm maybe blanking on that too. So I think it's worth taking Harvey here if he is sticking and picking. So I think that that's a smart pick. Then we get to McMorrow. McMorrow, we talked about it now. He's got his wide receivers. He's got his tight ends. He's got his running backs. I feel like Dart has to be the pick here. You know, if he feels like he's not best player available, then I guess maybe it's not worth it because I don't know if myself, I'm speaking personally, and I don't know if Simcoe, because Simcoe's got Kyler Murray and he's got Josh Allen, right? You still got Josh. Simcoe, who'd you trade? I see you in the chat. Who did you trade away? You traded away Drake May. You still got Josh Allen, right? Um, he's got his quarterbacks too. So I do think that they're, if he wants to, maybe take that gamble and try and get Dart at 2.5, go ahead and do it. But also just looking at the board, I feel like Dart, if you're a QB needy team and if you like Dart, I think that there's a good argument for him for just taking him here because, like, I don't know, if you love Luther Burden, go ahead and take him. Who else do we got? Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris. If you love those guys, go ahead and take them. But to me, I feel like Jackson Dart is just a pick by default there. Then we get to myself. If this is how it plays out, full disclosure, I'm picking Luther Burden in late seconds. I just feel like there's a small tiered break after this pick. I'll be honest, I'm interested in, trading up if I can snipe a guy that I really, really want. I don't feel totally compelled to do that because I've kind of accepted the fact and I'm very comfortable with the fact that I'm just inside of the bubble where whoever falls to me at this spot, I'm happy with getting. I don't love Jaden Higgins. I'm a big Trey Harris guy as well. But in this scenario, I think Luther Burden is a very easy pick for me. I don't have the need at wide receiver, but, like I was saying about Wallace with Ibuka, I don't need Luther Burden to step up and be a superstar right away. I can afford to wait on him and kind of add to that depth, and I can kind of figure it out from there after. I can make other moves. I got other bullets in the chamber. So I would go Luther Burden there. Now we get to Simcoe at 2-4. I'm not sure who Simcoe loves here. I'm really not totally sure. I mean, I'm looking at it. I just feel like best player available. I think you got to take Trey Harris. I don't want to get deep into the weeds here. I don't think I need to explain myself. He's got Ladd McConkey. I know that. I know it's a different regime than who was coaching those Keenan Allen and those Mike Williams teams, but it's still Justin Herbert. And we know that Justin Herbert can provide for fantasy value for a guy that's more of a route technician that can work out of the slot and get open at will and get his yards there. And then we know that he can provide for a guy that can be a downfield threat and a jump ball guy and a go ball guy and all that stuff. So, yeah, okay, it's a different coaching staff, but look at what Quentin Johnston was doing with these Chargers last year. Now imagine Trey Harris in that role instead. I think that's a lot better. So, yeah, okay, having two guys from the same team, especially two wide receivers fighting for the same targets, that could be a little risky. You never know. You don't want them to be eating into each other, but I think it's worth taking here. Like I said, it's all about just going best player available here. To me, I think Trey Harris is the best player available on the board, and I like the connection that Simcoe has with Ladd McConkey there because I think Justin Herbert can provide for both of them and make both of them more than fantasy relevant. So moving on to McMorrow at 5. This is his last pick of the second round, right? Thank God, because it's like how much more can I justify different spots? I saw that Jaylen Brown 3. I got the Celtics 18 plus, 20 plus, and 22 plus threes. Bounce back game like you read about. All right. Now we're looking at McMorrow here. I don't know. I think it's got to be Jaden Higgins. I think it's just got to be Jaden Higgins. You got to follow the draft capital. Who went first? 34. Oh. Yeah, it's Higgins. I didn't know if him or Jack Besh went first. I think it's just going to be Higgins. We had a pretty good discussion last night on the show where, I personally feel like Jalen Noel can coexist and be a complement to Nico Collins more than Jaden Higgins, who I feel like could be maybe more redundant just based off of size and skill set. But Frank made a really good argument that, Higgins is a guy that can play as that big slot role as well. So I decided to kind of walk my take back a little bit and settle on the fact that I'm not going to try and pick out one of the Texans receivers based off of where I think they're going to be playing. I think for me, it's more of a wait and see of who gets that slot role, who takes over those Diggs targets, because I think that's who's going to be more effective. So that could be Noel, that could be Higgins. I think that all three of these guys, Higgins, Noel, and Nico, are going to all be on the field at the same time plenty. But Higgins also a little bit bigger. He can play outside. Maybe he sees the two wide receiver sets more. So also just 34th pick of the draft. I think it's just going to be Higgins. Take best player available here. Just load up on those wide receivers, right? Because you got Hunter, you got McMillan. Then you grab Golden. And then, like we were saying, you bumped Josh Downs to the bench. But you shouldn't be totally satisfied with that wide receiver room just yet. So I think grab a wide receiver here, grab Jalen Higgins, and be happy with that. Now we go to Frank. I don't know. Who does Frank go here? Frank kind of needs a little bit of everything. I think with Frank, we're gonna go. Let me cheat real quick. Let me pull up these rookie rankings. Let me just see how he's ranking these guys. Frank, I'm going to go Kyle Williams. He's got Kyle Williams ranked crazy high. Not crazy. I shouldn't say that's not crazy to me. But he's got Kyle Williams ranked very high. I've seen on Twitter, it sounds like a lot of people are seeing Kyle in third rounds of rookie drafts and stuff. I don't get that. That makes like no sense to me at all. So I'm not playing that way. I think also we're a Patriots dominant league. I think it's going to be Kyle Williams there. I think he needs a wide receiver. I don't know if I'm totally sold on Scatabo this high, given the draft capital. And we talked about it. Why did he fall? It's because of the depth. It's because of questions or concerns, anything like that. Kyle Williams, third round pick, wide receiver. Patriots need a wide receiver. What he brings to the table could be really explosive. I think Kyle Williams is the pick there. Now we move on to Amaral making the pick. Let me see. Should I cheat again? Maybe let me pull up these sheets one last time. Who's Amaral got? Does Amaral go Scatamo? Fuck it, I'll go Amaral. Scatabo here. Then we're going to move on to Frank. I'll take him with Jack Mesh guy. Frank needs a little bit of everything too, so I don't think he should be too picky in terms of positions. Now, the Cucks, I have absolutely no clue. I've done 5 million mocks. I have no idea where their head's at. I don't know what they're trying to get. So I'm just going to kind of go top of the board here. One, I think Mason Taylor, they should take. I think they need at least a young tight end. Mason Taylor's got a really good pathway to targets as a rookie. I think he could very easily be the second most targeted player on his team. I think there's an argument that he has a better path to targets in 2025 than Loveland and Warren. I mean, I think when we're looking at 2025, I think he's in the discussion just for targets. I mean, I think that Loveland and Warren can do a lot more with their targets. I think they're more capable, but in a offensive system that I think should be fairly inspired by what the Detroit Lions have been doing. I'm not going to shy away from taking the tight end there. NFL bloodlines, Joy Taylor bloodlines, position of need as well. And he's at the top of the board. So I would go Mason Taylor there. Then why not take, Tootin? Where did he go? He was a 4th round pick. I keep thinking for some reason he was like a day 2 guy. They need some youth at running back. I don't think that anybody is necessarily jumping off the board here to me. Any other position, I don't know if quarterback, they got Love, they got Purdy. If they feel really strong about one of these guys to be a QB3, then sure, go ahead and do it. I don't know if it's really worth taking a Milroe or a Shadur or a Tyler Shook here. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to have them taking Tootin. Then I'll go Amaral, Jalen Noel. And then I'll wrap it up here. We'll go Dylan. What am I going to do? Get caught up on the 24th pick of the draft. I've talked about it. I think that Sam's can be plenty fine. I mean, maybe his ceiling is capped, in that Cleveland backfield behind Judkins. But we've seen them produce 2 top 15 running backs in Cleveland before. So, if you think that they can be anywhere close to that, I mean, volume is king, touches are king. So, I think that he's going to get good looks. I think he's a really good running back. I think he's going to be a good rookie. So that's all I got. We are 3 minutes away from, the start of the rookie draft. So I should probably wrap this up now. This is where I'm at right now. I'm feeling pretty good about this board. Of course, somebody's going to make a trade and fuck it all up. And it's not going to matter. You know what? I see the chat asking for a 3-1. I'm just going to say if I'm McMorrow here, you got 3-1, 3-2, 3-4, 3-7, 3-9. If I'm him, I'm just taking every quarterback that's available on this board. Why not? You filled out your lineup so much already. Why not take Milrow and Sanders and Shuck? I mean, I was saying last night, I think Shuck is going to be unbelievable value wherever he goes because he's probably going in the third round. Just look at how this board's playing out. He's probably going to the third round, and he might be a week one starter for the Saints. So, whether you believe in him or not, I think the value just gets too good at a certain point. So if I'm McMurray, you've already addressed all these positions of need. You got decent depth already, like as it is. I mean, look at this, right? Why not just take throw darts on all these quarterbacks, unless you really are like in love with one of these prospects, which, like, I mean, I don't know, like, are you really? Just take every quarterback that's available and just hope that one, two, any of them hit. And you could either, have that be one of your QBs of the future, or you can flip them for, more draft capital and help build out your roster to be whatever the hell you want it to be. So that's all I got. I'm going to leave it at that. I will see you guys in the draft room in 2 seconds. I got to set up the Zoom call and then send it to the league chat. I'll stop sharing. Thank you to Sundog Multimedia. Thank you to Easy Peasy Moving and Service. And I look forward to streaming this draft. I think we're going to have some fireworks.